Planning and Preparing to Facilitate. The purpose of this lecture is to go through issues related to facilitating. The learning outcomes for this module on planning and preparing to facilitate are that you are able to recognize the things you need to design in advance when planning sessions, that you are able to identify the components of an effective training sessions, and that you are able to design well-planned sessions. Assignment 1. Read through the slide and write down your own thoughts. Submit your thoughts, skill assessment and ideas in Prima. If you have planned training or education session before, think of that or those. If you haven't done it before, think what you would do when you plan, for example, a lecture to learners. Write down the answers to the questions. Reflect your answers considering the topics of this module. Egg or chicken? Content versus outcomes. The first thing to consider is the content versus the learning goal. Which one comes first, in your opinion? The content of the education session or the learning goals? Traditionally, there has been more focus on the content of a session than on the learning goals. However, the more you can build content in the direction of the target, the better the coaches can utilize the information they receive in their own operating environment. The effectiveness of education is thus increasing. The main thing is not to give information, but to move learning into practice. When you are designing sessions, this means that you must keep your focus on the learning goal instead of on the content. Each section of the training should have one or more clear learning objectives that are linked to the coach's previous knowledge. A good learning goal describes exactly what a learner should be able to do after a training session. The learning goal should also be measurable, so that you as a facilitator know if you have achieved your goals. The ideal structure of a typical education session. Start, heart of the session, and end. In your first assignment, you were thinking of your own idea of the ideal structure of an education session. The structure of the ideal training session is presented on the slide. It consists of 3 sections: the beginning or presentation of the theme or topic. Second, the main content, body or heart of the session. And third, the end. If you are planning your sessions, consider these 3 elements. If you keep pre-planned sessions, the first thing you could do is to check the plan and try to find these elements and whether it is possible to add missing ones. The following slides consider a little more in detail what each element should be about. Start. When we talk about competence-based training, the start has 4 different parts. Depending on the training session, these may come in slightly different orders. The first step is to link the content with the previously learned, for example from previous training or lectures or prior tasks. The second is to create the environment. Sometimes it might be a good idea to do this first. Creating a positive learning environment is a prerequisite for learning to take place. Creating a learning atmosphere is very important, especially at the beginning of the training period, when trainees might not know each other yet. There may also be a need to restart the atmosphere at the beginning of the day or following a particularly difficult training session, and the atmosphere needs improvement or the coaches start to get tired at the end of the training day. Next, the learning goals of the training section should be presented. Those should be in the form of, after this session you're able to know or recognize or do certain things. Goals keep both the coach developer and the coaches aware of what kind of learning goals they should achieve. Finally, it is also necessary to make some kind of check for previous knowledge in order to take the learner into account in the training session. Unless you, as a facilitator, don't have an idea of the baseline, you will not be able to build the content to the right level. The starting level may vary greatly between coaches, and this is challenging. When designing, you should prepare approaches for varying levels in order to be able to respond to the learner's levels. The heart of the session. The heart reflects the main part of the session. This part determines the effectiveness of learning and, in general, if any learning happens at all. It includes the creating experiences part, as well as adding new knowledge and assisting with the application of the new knowledge in the learner's own coaching. The order and duration of these parts may change, and the starting point will depend on the background and the experience of the trainees. If the coaches already have a significant experience and knowledge base, they can move faster towards applying the knowledge and their experience. On the other hand, it might be necessary, for example, to spend more time in building new information. New information can be given in different ways. It can be given, for example, by lecturing or teamwork. Make sure that new information is delivered in short sequences, 7 to 8 minutes at a time. If the coaches already have experience, then that can be utilized. If not, create common experiences. This can be done, for example, through video, reading, or sharing their own experiences in coaching. The third part includes the application of new information and practical training. This can be achieved through, for example, using a variety of real-life cases, scenarios, role plays, and coaching simulations. Closure. Parts of closure are to check for learning, reflection, and through developing an action plan for continuous learning. Closure is possibly the most important part of the education section, but it is very often the part with the weakest design and build-up. Checking for learning can be done in different ways, for example by asking questions or creating a mind map. It is important for the facilitator to react if the learning has not been achieved. In this case, more time has to be spent on the topic before proceeding to the next. Facilitators should not underestimate the self-reflection of their coaches. This is essential to allow coaches to consider how they will change their behavior. It is more likely that behavior will change when there is time to reflect on the information just learned concerning own skills and activities. This action plan is a means through which the facilitator helps the coach to create the steps ahead. What kind of actions the coach has to do so that he can change his or her practices in their practical work. It is also important to consider the individual starting points for this. This slide shows the complete structure of a session. Remember that all steps need to be in line with the set learning outcomes. The 3 steps within the main part of the session, the heart, can be arranged in a different order if necessary, and a different amount of time can be allotted to each part. The heart part should be the main part of your session and hence should take the longest. However, a good climate or atmosphere is important for learning, so reconsider step 2 if necessary. Steps 1 to 3 need to be effective, so think about them carefully, but still do not spend too much time on them. Steps 8 to 10 are important in order to transition into learning, that they need to be included into the session no matter how short the time is. Assignment number 2. Reflect on the questions of the second assignment and submit your notes to Prima. Thank you. Further reading and information you can find from the following links presented on this last slide.